Waiting for some people to jump on, eh? A couple people.
I don't have access to the numbers.
Oh yeah, I see. Hello everybody. See a couple of you, a few of you joining us this morning. Hi there. Happy Friday. You finally made it to the end of the work week. We're getting started once again with our First Alert digital news desk. Some of you might remember I was doing the First Alert Fastcast back in the day, but if you've been watching Action 2 News this morning, you might have noticed I've been doing something brand new called the First Alert Safety Desk. So let me know if there are any issues because we are starting this back up. We've got a couple of new things. Let me know if you can hear me. Hopefully you can. And in the comment section, you can also chime in. You can ask questions because we're going to go through the top 3 First Alert Safety Desk stories that I did this week, including fire alarms not working for younger children. That was the big one this week, I think, because there was a local tie with that. So we're just going to wait for a couple of people. Chime in, say hello, say good morning, and then I will share this feed on my Facebook page, Aisha Morales, WBAY, and then we will get started. So let me know where you're watching from. We can start there. And again, the plan is to do this every Friday.
You have Slack up?
Yes.
I will Slack you from my desk.
Okay, thanks, Ted. Okay, good morning, Cassie. Good morning, Jim. He says, I hear you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So this is, pretty casual, giving you the stories. And what you're going to notice is a lot more of us, not just me, doing this. So I wish you could see in front of me. I wish I could turn this all around. We've got like 4 different screens, a couple of different keyboards, which there used to be 4, if you might remember that when I did Fastcast. I'm going to share this to my page, actually. Okay, so it's been shared to Aisha Morales, WBAY. So like I said, we want to recap some of this week's important safety desk stories. Good morning to you, Joseph. You're watching from Beaver. Awesome, glad you can hear me. Okay, so we'll get started on this. What I'm going to do is play the story that I had this week on fire alarms, the high frequency fire alarms. Believe it or not, they don't work for certain kids. They don't wake them up. There's a reason for that, and then there's options that you can share along with anybody that might have kids that are ages 5 to 12. So anything above that, it does work for us. But in the situation that happened this week, things were good. It just started a different conversation with those high frequency alarms, those fire alarms, and the Fire Association actually saying that they don't really work for younger kiddos, and we know how hard they sleep. So let's go ahead and play that story. And then if you have any questions or any comments, I'll make sure to take a look at the comment section. Good morning to you, Deb. Thank you for watching. Again, let me know where you're watching from, and we'll get started here.
Wake your younger kids. Aisha's at the First Alert Safety Desk.
Good morning, Tammy. That was a best case scenario, especially knowing the girls may have practiced using that ladder, so they knew what to do. But this brings up another conversation this morning, a report by the U.S. Fire Administration. It says high-frequency smoke alarms are not effective in waking sleeping preteen kids. In fact, it says they wake up only about 56% of kids and prompt 55% to 89% of kids and prompted 84 to 89% to escape from their bedroom. In the study, they worked with kids ages 5 to 12 because they found kids over 12 responded well to our everyday high-frequency alarms. Researchers say voice alarms don't need to use a child's name or even their mother's voice, their parents' voice, which is good. It allows the alarm to be manufactured at a lower cost using a generic recording. Again, this is something that you can talk to your family about when coming up with that fire escape plan. Researchers moving forward now say they will look into how a child's response to escaping is influenced by what is said in that message used in a voice alarm. Coming up in the next half hour, the CDC is expanding a program at major airports as it tries to prevent the spread of illness, including flu and RSV, especially as we head. All right, so I think the audio did cut off because I'm still learning this new system, but hopefully you got the gist of it. So you might have seen the fact that those high frequency alarms don't work and why they don't work for certain kids. And if you look on WBAY.com, I'm going to pull this up here. If you are new to learning about First Alert Safety Desk, because it actually just got started not too long ago on Action 2 News this morning, you'll notice right up here at the very top, there's a Safety Desk tab. And if you click that, it's got all of the stories actually that I've been doing and working on, including the smoke alarm story. So if you kind of miss the audio and you're like, hey, wait a second, I want to watch that over again, it is right here. So it talks about the fact that the common smoke alarms we use don't necessarily wake up nearly half of young children. I touched on some of those statistics. And what we do often too for First Alert Safety Desk, and we're just making this an introduction day today. So what we do with Safety Desk is we often will put the link for the study, for anything that I'm talking about. So here it talks about that story locally, but then here's the report by the U.S. Fire Administration that I found. And actually our Tammy Elliott helped me find this. It talks about that, and it talks about the statistics, the fact that the female voice combination of a low frequency tone plus a female voice, they tested all of that. And then you go down here and you've got the quote from the project researcher in this study, in this project, in this report. He says the fact that we were able to find a smoke alarm sound that reduces the amount of time it takes for many children to wake up and leave the bedroom could save lives. I thought that was pretty impactful. It's got all these statistics right there, some of the research takeaways, and then like I said in the clip there, the future research is to see what could be said in those voice messages and those voice alarms to wake a child up. So that is a really important story that we did this week, and something that I actually learned this week. I had no idea that that was actually a thing. So we learn a lot of things together at the First Alert Safety Desk. Once again, thank you for joining us. We are doing a lot here when it comes to the First Alert Digital Desk, starting with today, giving you the recap of our First Alert Safety Desk stories for the week. I picked 3 really good ones that I thought that you would want to hear, and maybe if you have questions, let me know. So I'll often want to have you chime in, let me know where you're watching from, if you have any questions or comments. If you have a comment, I can go ahead and just read it in the comment section, and I appreciate all of you saying good morning. Thank you, Deb. You're watching from Green Lake. Appreciate you. And we talked a little bit to you, Joseph. Thank you, Jim. Who else is watching? Cassie, thank you for watching. Okay, so we'll move on to the next story. Syphilis rise in babies. That was another one, another important story. I want to make sure I pull that up here and have it ready for you. So we've seen a rise in babies being born with syphilis. There is something to be said about the fact that it is very preventable, and we've seen these numbers skyrocket, and health officials are sounding the alarm saying that it is preventable. They want people to make sure that they're coming in and getting the treatment that they need, not people, but pregnant women to come in and get that treatment that they need so they don't pass that bacteria onto their baby, right? So here's the story that we did this week at the First Alert Safety Desk.
Call for urgent action from public health officials. The concern this morning is the alarming increase of babies born with syphilis. Aisha is at the First Alert Safety Desk.
Well, Tammy, the CDC just releasing a report. It says more than 3,700 babies were born with syphilis in the U.S. in 2022. That is a 32% increase from the year before. And listen to this, 1,000% rise since 2012. Syphilis is a chronic bacterial disease usually transmitted sexually, but a pregnant mother can pass it on to her baby. The CDC says the new numbers are the highest reported in the U.S. in more than 30 years. It is preventable, is what we wanted to tell you this morning. Health officials say about 88% of last year's cases could have been prevented with testing and treatment during the mother's pregnancy. A single dose of penicillin, that medication given at least a month before the end of a pregnancy, doctors say nearly always prevents infected mothers from passing the bacteria to their babies. Syphilis during pregnancy can result in miscarriage, doctors say, also stillbirth, infant death, or lifelong medical issues for that baby. The CDC says the situation has reached dire and alarming levels. It's calling on the entire medical community to help find and treat infected people to protect those newborns. Coming up in the next half hour, ADHD is very common and often kids are diagnosed with the brain disorder. But this morning, we'll talk about signs to look for in adults. Tammy.
Call for urgent action from public health officials. The concern this morning is the alarming increase of babies born with syphilis. Aisha is at the First Alert Safety Desk.
Well, Tammy, the CDC just releasing a report. It says more than 3,700 babies were born with syphilis in the U.S. in 2022. That is a 32% increase from the year before. And listen to this, Okay, so you got the idea there. Sorry, I had to answer a couple questions here. So that story also is on WBAY.com, and I will pull that up so you know where to find it, and maybe we could go through some of the information together here. Again, it is pretty easy to find. Let's go back here. Pulled it up for you. CDC right here where it says syphilis in babies up 32% in a year. You could pull up and you want to maybe go more in depth on your own at home. Click right here. It talks about the report. There it is. A little bit more in depth. And right here you could see this image provided by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention this past week actually, showing the counties. It shows that color teal. You could see where federal officials suggest offering syphilis testing to all sexually active people between the ages of 15 and 44. So the Associated Press is reporting that the suggestion could affect tens of millions of people based on federal data right here. So you could see continue to assess individual risk factors to determine screening needs. We've got some in Wisconsin. And then the teal offers syphilis testing. What I just mentioned, you could see the West Coast kind of full right there. Not too bad here in Wisconsin, but we definitely have some work to do to make sure that people know that there are options. The fact that it is preventable and we don't want babies to be born with syphilis, it is not fun. And I mentioned some of the side effects and what could happen to a baby that contracts syphilis. Again, it is a sexually transmitted disease. So we could go back, and it's a little bit self-explanatory here on our website, WBAY.com. We make it pretty easy in the fact that the CDC is saying the situation has reached dire and alarming levels. So there is that report in case you want to see that on WBAY.com. So we do want to move on to another story here that I've been covering this week. This one was kind of different. I found this one overnight one morning, so I come in overnight and prepare for the newscast for Action 2 News this morning, and I found this story talking about, it's a study actually, it talks about how pulling an all-nighter eases depression. But obviously what you're about to hear is you don't want to do that. You don't want to pull an all-nighter, but there's a reason why researchers are looking into this. So I'll play the story, and then if you have anything to say, please let me know.
Wired and tired. Maybe you've heard that phrase after not getting a lot of sleep. Researchers have found pulling an all-nighter might ease depression, but you need to read the fine print on this. Aisha's at the First Alert Safety Desk.
Yeah, Tammy, just like anything else, there's pros and cons. I've just read over a study by neurobiologists at Northwestern University in Illinois. They say they may have uncovered what creates that punch-drunk effect we get after a sleepless night. After a night like that, your body may be exhausted, but your brain feels jittery or hyperactive, so they wanted to find out why. Researchers used mice for this study. They induced sleep loss in some of those mice, while others got a typical night's sleep. We can't ask mice if they're depressed, obviously, so researchers created a depressed-like state in all the mice before disrupting their sleep. The mice that stayed up all night showed a reversed depressed state. Dopamine is the chemical that gives us that reward response. Researchers say sleep-deprived mice had higher dopamine activity. They say there is a transition in your brain going from depressed to the temporary boost in dopamine, and that gives your brain a chance to reorganize. That brain rewiring gave mice a boost in mood for several days, they found. It gets a lot more involved. Brain science is complex, but that is the short version of what they discovered. Experts say this doesn't mean you should go without sleep in order to ease depression. They say sleep loss in humans leads to health problems, which we've talked about here at the First Alert Safety Desk. Researchers are just doing this to create new depression treatments, is what they're hoping, based off of the area of the brain they saw was affected by less sleep and that boost of that happy chemical dopamine. Coming up in the All right, so a lot to learn there, because obviously they're just trying to make sure that we can help people who are dealing with depression, and sleep sometimes impacts that, right? So let's look at the study here. I'm going to pull it up on our website. Again, you can go to the Safety Desk tab on WBAY.com. You can see right here, pulling an all-nighter eases depression, and then our awesome web team helps me out every morning in making sure that we get these links for you to be able to check, because those live reports that I do on Action 2 News this morning, I often say we are just scratching the surface. So we want to click in here and look at the study by neurobiologists. They're from Northwestern University is where I found this. So they talk right here, the highlights: acute sleep deprivation induces dopamine dependent affective state transitions, which basically means what I mentioned is they use mice in this, and obviously you can't ask mice, like I said, how they're feeling, but what they noticed is there was that spike in dopamine. So they, in the summary right here, they talk about that. They use big fancy words, so often I also have to sort of break that down for you. Another highlight is sleep loss enhances that dopamine release in distributed brain regions. So what they found in this, neurobiologists were looking at this, and they found that when they studied these mice, and possibly this could be a thing that happens in humans, when you're going between some sleep loss and that dopamine increase, it happens in certain parts of the brain, is what they found. And that could really help them in coming up with, oh, there's a little graphic there too, I forgot about that. And that could really help in creating some medication for people who struggle with depression. So you could see right here that graphic with the mice. They've got the sleep deprivation, the mice on the right, and the altered affective state. They had to sort of alter their state of mind a little bit to see what happens when they are either getting enough sleep or not getting enough sleep, and then they saw those spikes in dopamine levels. So it brought about this conversation and this really interesting study that I was actually able to bring to you on Action 2 News this morning for the First Alert Safety Desk. So once again, these stories will be on WBAY.com. We had a couple of new ones this morning, and just because I want to mention one of them, I'm going to go back here. Here we go. So a couple that I did this morning. Right here, companies are not doing enough to get pesticides out of food. That was a big one. So 17 major food manufacturers, they got an F from a nonprofit that looks into these sort of things. They looked at these companies' goals as far as how they wanted to not have as many pesticides in their food, right, for us. That was pretty interesting. I did another story about digital detox, kind of ironic because you're probably watching on social media or online, but it's all about the Goldilocks rule, making sure that you're keeping tabs of how you're feeling. If you're constantly on social media, what is that doing to your mood? It really depends person to person. And then every Thursday too, the Consumer Product Safety Commission comes out with recalls, and we could probably go through a couple of these because I thought they were pretty interesting. Magnolia Market, we've seen that brand at Target, but this one in particular was online. They were concerned about the 3-wick glass candles, recalling them due to fire and laceration hazards, but again, that was just sold online. This one was a pretty big deal, I thought. Children's nightgowns recalled due to burn hazard. I know obviously a lot of people use Amazon.com, and so take a look at this here. Those are the nightgowns right there. It says the children's nightgowns fail to meet the flammability standard for children's sleepwear. So that's kind of scary. I made sure to put that in there, and it talks about how you can get a refund, talks about the different ones that you might have bought. And again, they were sold on Amazon.com. So every Thursday we'll also make sure to have some of those recalls for you that come about. There's usually quite a few, and we want to make sure that you and your family and your loved ones, your friends are all safe, especially with the holidays coming up and you're buying things for people. We get a lot of those recalls around this time of year too. So thank you so much for joining us here at the First Alert Digital Desk, back at it after a little bit, and thank you for chiming in to the few of you. Thank you, John, for saying good morning, and Deb and Joseph watching from Beaver. Thank you for chiming in, letting me know that you can hear me, and rolling with a couple of the technical things. Just very casual conversation with you all. And make sure to share this if you see it later, or maybe keep it in your the back of your mind that I'm going to try to do this every Friday morning right around this time. And keep me posted if you have any safety concerns in the community that I could add to the First Alert safety desk. So for now, I will say goodbye, happy Friday, and have a great weekend.